Hello, dreamers, and welcome back to the Dreamers Live podcast. Today's conversation is entitled Outrage Fatigue Part 2. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Sit back and be part of the conversation, and we will see you soon.
This podcast is a presentation of Pioneer Dream, celebrating 30 years of moving stories for our corporate, nonprofit, and entertainment partners.
Hello, fellow dreamers. Welcome back to the Dreamers Live podcast here in the center of the known universe, Bartlesville, Oklahoma, in the Pioneer Dream Studios, our lair.
Yes, which is looking much spiffier lately.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. I am joined as always by my co-conspirator and co-host, Ann Jeanette. I am Jay Webster, and we are in the new dressed out sound studio here at our loft. We've always had a sound studio, but now that we're doing the podcast and it's more than one human in the booth at a time.
Yes. Now we've got like the foam squares on the sides. We got some cool lighting. We have like a little table. I have some coffee, everyone. I'd like you to know I'm going to be very careful not to slurp it or sip it, as my podcast mate really doesn't like. So if you hear me sneak away, you'll know what I'm doing.
Right. How's everything for you? What's going on?
Much better with this coffee. Yeah, I'm feeling good for heading in for, a big winter storm. I'm sure if we were at the grocery store right now, I don't know for you guys in our part of the country, anytime there's inclement, is it inclement or inclement? Depending on bad.
What part of the country you're from, I guess, right?
Bad weather. Everyone panics and they go to the store for apparently bread and milk. So,
well, we get into I think we kind of get into the hibernation mode. And so it's a mixture of sheer panic. Oh my God, snow might be coming. Who knows if we'll ever see life again. This could be it. And then also a secret little joy.
Don't you think which is a little bit
like, well, if I'm going down, I'm going to get this package of cookies with me. Nothing says save my life like baking cookies.
I think it's hope. When people go to the store, they're like, I better get some supplies.
No one runs to the store in order to get stocked up on carrots and celery. They're like,
I don't know. I like a good celery.
Okay, if the snow happens, I don't think this celery is going to keep me alive.
It's the best. A snow day is the very best because everyone in your world, anyway, just agrees. Oh no, no one can get ahead today. We're not working.
Right.
We're all just going to sit around and do nothing.
Snow day. Yes. Right, when the world is paralyzed and we're not upset about it.
No, it's great. What I find ironic is no one can drive to work, but we can find our way to Starbucks.
We can usually find our way to sled down a hill somewhere.
Yes, for sure. Do you hear me sipping my coffee? Can you guys hear? Okay, I was quiet.
What's the thing that everybody's into now?
Which thing?
Where you do the hot mic and then everybody, this is the sound of raindrops
SRM something. I don't know.
It's all a little bizarre. I know everybody's into it and I get it, but there's an underlying perversion to it somewhere.
ASMR.
This is me eating soup. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's disgusting.
One of our favorite things, to critique other people on is
yes.
We grew up listening to different radio shows before there were podcasts. You'd tune in when you're doing long drives and stuff, and you'd listen to different radio hosts and all that kind of stuff. And so, in recent years, those radio hosts have mostly gone either towards sports, which I still enjoyed, except that once you listen to a morning show, everybody else is just going to be going over the same thing because there's no new news. You're just responding to what happened yesterday in the game.
Right.
So by the time you hit 3 p.m., it's kind of like, well, you probably don't know who won the Super Bowl, but
that's when they have to do their in-depth interviews.
Oh my gosh,
afternoon,
really good stuff. And then of course the other half of those talk shows are political and
thank you.
I've always been a little critique-ish about some of those shows because they'll go on and they'll say, okay, well, first of all, you have to tune in here. This is the only place you're going to get this information. This is the only place.
No one else does this.
Yeah, and if you don't tune in every day, they're going to get over on you. They're going to take over the country, whoever they are. The libs or the rights or the righties or tighty-whities, I don't know. Anyway, whoever they are, they're going to take over because you weren't listening to the program and you let your guard down.
Yeah.
And so then they'll go on and you have to have some take to keep people tuned in. You have to have something. So, like I listened to a guy, 10 years ago or whatever. And he's like, oh, the president, I'm just telling you now, you're only going to hear this here. And I'm just telling you right now, they're going to try for a third term. They're going to go out and do it, and they're going to warp things, and they're going to twist things, and they're going for the third term. Yeah. And then, of course, they did not. They did not go for the third term. But at no point has a radio host, especially on the political side, ever said, you know what? I spent 3 hours talking about this person, and I probably just need to let you know I was wrong.
I was wrong.
Had my information was wrong. My sources were wrong. My whatever I assumed was going to happen did not, in fact, happen. Now, I did spread fear, and I did ruin your day. And you went out and you went to your family event and you yelled at everybody about how President so-and-so is going to go for the third term. But I just need to let you know I was wrong, and I'm sorry. And here's what really happened, and here's what we should really expect.
I guess they feel like that doesn't sell as many commercial slots, you feel like?
I Was Wrong is not a big seller on things unless you're a celebrity and it's a tell-all book.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, if you're like a big A-list celebrity and then you figure out later that what you did was wrong and you tell everyone, they're like, oh my God, I love them even so much more.
We don't really create a climate for I was wrong. We just did a podcast with our middle school group. We're at Central Middle School. Shout out to the Central Middle School broadcasting team and Dreamers Club.
Woo!
And our subject on that podcast was the value of being wrong. And we talked all about, trying to get comfortable with the idea of being wrong, because we are. And for you and I, now that we're in our mid-20s, we have seen that finding out you were wrong about something usually is the first step to opening up a whole new world about things. So like we joke on the podcast with the kids and other places about how, for centuries, for thousands of years, actually, we believed that the world was flat. And I know some of you listening still do, and that's okay. But no, we believed the world was flat, and not only was it flat, but it was the center of the known universe, not Oklahoma, but the whole earth. And so within that, we figured out that we believed that so hard that we actually imprisoned anybody that disagreed with us. We killed people that thought it was something else and all that kind of stuff. And then it turned out, whoops, we were wrong. And the world is round. And not only that, but figuring that out, or coming to that conclusion that the world was actually round and we were actually wrong, not only changed how we saw our globe, but changed how we saw the universe. And it opened up 1,000 other mysteries that would not have been available to us without that kind of knowledge or insight or whatever. And so being wrong was the first step in all this discovery. And so it was pretty amazing. So I said all that to say,
why did you say all that to say?
I said all that to say I was wrong. So we did a podcast several months ago, actually way back in June.
How do you remember any of this? A podcast back in June?
Well, I remember doing the podcast. I had to look up that it was in June. I had to look up that it was podcast number 7.
Okay.
And it was called Outrage Fatigue. And oddly enough, it is probably one of the highest rated podcasts we've ever had in the series. And that's saying something for our podcast, because we've had a lot of very successful podcast episodes. So in this,
brag a little
I actually started by saying, this is one of those podcasts where in a couple of months you'll say, oh, that was brilliant. Or you'll say, boy, was he stupid and what was he smoking? And so I think...
Oh, are you coming back to correct yourself?
I am. I'm coming back to say I
Impressive.
misdiagnosed or misinterpreted where we were as a country. I felt like back in June that as a nation, things were calming down a bit. And in that moment, they really were.
You did realize a presidential election was ramping up.
But at that moment, it just hadn't exploded yet. We hadn't had the debates where things went awry. And I felt like the vast majority of the population did have this thing, because we had so many things forecasted on us, as a people group about our nation and where things were going. Most of those things had not come true.
Right.
We are always being asked by media heads on both sides to get ramped up and get pissed off and get angry about everything.
Media heads.
But you can only live at a Mach 4 for so long, and then you just get tired. And
are
you're
you sure you don't go to Mach 5? Is that a thing?
No, you just get tired, and you're like, I can't keep up this pace anymore.
Right.
And so somewhere in there, we were like, I want to light the torches and storm things again. It's just that I did that last weekend and the weekend before, and I don't know if I want to storm anything else right now.
So that's where you thought that our country was headed for outrage fatigue.
Conversations that we were having with other people, and I felt like the general temperature in the country had come down a couple degrees.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. Well, meanwhile, the first debate happened, and that went awry for all those other reasons, and then everything just got escalated, and now here we are. Maybe in some ways, I don't know. Maybe we're worse. We're in a worse position than maybe we were in the first Trump administration versus where we are now. It's hard to say.
In terms of people getting along, polarization, not getting along.
The anger and all that kind of stuff. And that's a whole very interesting conversation as to why people are angry. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we can get into all that today, but after the election, I did kind of set myself to that goal of trying to understand where both sides are and why they voted the way they voted and what does it really mean, because you can draw a lot of conclusions, but it's only in interviewing people and talking to people and getting that information that you really determine, this is what's motivating us, and that's a significant key in that process. So where I do think in that moment back in June last year in 2024, there was a significant outrage fatigue. We did have enough issues then that kind of reanimated the entire process. Mm-hmm. And so much of that process, I think, does live, online and in the social medias and all that kind of stuff. And,
right.
And I guess in my own way, now you and I are both making decisions on how much social media let in, how much actual news programming to let in. And there's this weird fine line between being aware and doing everything you can to make your community around you better.
Yeah.
And then also saturating yourself on news that you can't really do much about.
Right. Well, and our lines are different. I mean, you're able to take in more of that than I am because you're so smart.
Well, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty intelligent. I think the viewers knew that already.
It's really more that it just, for me, it's just so much of what's happening in the world is unbelievable.
Yes.
That I feel like I can only carry so much. And so for me, the stuff that is national or international, a lot of times, I just, at this point in my life, don't have the headspace for a ton of it.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, please let me know the top headlines.
Yeah.
If we need to go hide in a bunker, let me know. And I mean, you're able to take in a bit more of that. But still, you're pretty guarded about how much, because it can really become your whole.
Well, I have noticed that there is a pretty significant impact on me, depending on how much of that stuff I let in, whether it's, legitimate news sites. And I'm pretty careful about what news sites we use and not trying to find stuff that agrees with me or, that just supports my viewpoint. I really want to know what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And
so you look at it from different reputations.
I'm not sold on either party. I'm not sold on either candidate. I can see kind of what's happening, but I really try that. And so there's that part of it. And then because we have to do so much promotional stuff, we are on the socials, as the kids would say.
Is that what the kids are saying?
I don't think that's what
I think
they're
it's
saying
the parents of the kids.
Yeah. But, I'm on that too a little bit. And so, it kind of begs the question, why do we post what we post when it comes to issues? What do we suspect either consciously or subconsciously that post will do? And are there any benefits to posting that stuff?
Are you talking about, this is funny that we're talking about politics today because we don't normally talk about politics.
No, I know.
I don't like it. But I'm gonna humor you.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding. Are you talking about political posting?
Yeah,
when
I
we
think
have
so.
a certain a belief, or theology or whatever that we adhere to politically, and then we're putting it out there for saying, "Oh, I feel this way about what just happened." Give me an example.
I guess what I'm looking at is I want to help us and maybe the listeners too to be, most of what we do with the Dreamers Live podcast and with Dreamer Live events, we try to help people to live intentionally. Okay. And that's how we generally get to a better community, and that's how we get to better lives.
And not necessarily just default to what everyone else around us is doing.
I think the intention is how do we want to approach news, and how do we want to approach social media as a byproduct of that news intentionally? And what guidance can we offer ourselves or set for ourselves? Because I think the amount of anxiety and the amount of anger and the amount of frustration that's happening when you just default to social media and go there a lot and do all that stuff is creating a great deal of unhappiness and a great deal of discontentment.
Yeah.
Not that unhappiness is always wrong. There are just world events that happen that are unhappy and that require some responses and stuff like that. But but we can't live at that level all the time.
Yes.
And you can't live with the siren going off, 24/7, 52 weeks of the year.
Yeah, breaking news.
Yeah, so
all the time.
We have to figure out a system for ourselves. Otherwise, we get so depleted we can't really do good. When the opportunities arise.
Sort of like the weight of what's happening around us prevents, and that's how I find it. So the weight around me of all of that prevents me from doing good.
Yeah, an example of that is you and I have chosen to take social media apps off of our phones.
Yeah.
And that is...
I've noticed you've been playing some solitaire before bed, which cracks me up.
What happens is I read, and I do enjoy reading.
Right. But it makes you sleepy. But
then I get to a place where my mind is a little restless, or I've kind of read everything I can read right now. And I want to do something that has some entertainment value. And that's normally where in the past we would have defaulted to go into the socials.
Scroll for 15 minutes.
And I don't want to do that, especially not before bed. And so I have gone to solitaire because it's like something that engages my mind. There is a skill to it.
Right.
It is involving my mental powers, which are, significant. And so I find that a little helpful, but it's not doing social media stuff.
Well, right. So I'm curious, when you play solitaire, quick side note, do you always win?
No, sometimes Hal wins.
Know about cards.
Hal is the computer.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes Hal wins, but they're pretty high on me right now. Are you
pretty good?
Yeah, man. They're trying to tell me that I'm doing well.
Well,
I'm not putting any money behind it, but it's going okay.
I know I married up, and
So what do you do? What rules do you make for yourself when it comes to your intake on media?
Okay.
In terms of social media and or news or anything. Right. And why do you make those rules for yourself?
Well, okay, that's good. The social media off the phone has been really good, which just means if I'm going to go on Facebook, it'll be during the workday usually, or maybe at home for a little bit, and it's more intentional.
Right.
Like you're sitting at your computer. You're like, I am on the social. It's too convenient on your phone to just default to that at all times.
Yeah, you find yourself in the grocery store line and you're on your phone.
Yeah, and those little moments that you might normally chat with somebody, or I don't know, have a thought like, oh, it's sunny outside and I'm thankful for this, are just naturally filled with those things. Right. So that has really helped me, and I find myself not even really wanting to go on. I have to for work. And it's really been interesting because the times I've had to work that way, I'm like, oh, I don't want to go on. But that has helped me. For me, I cannot see. I'm just weird though. I'm ultra sensitive, and I don't love that about myself. But there are certain images that I can't see, or I literally can't unsee them.
Right.
And so some people can see a terrible news story and some footage. And to me, if there's human suffering in it, I will just not be okay.
Right.
I will not be able to go on to dinner. That just stays with me. So I really have to guard, especially what I see.
Yeah.
So that makes a difference for me. But there are also some headlines that I've read that I will never forget. The first drafts of stories that were just so I really have to know when I'm walking into, I hate it when you go to a waiting room at a doctor's office or whatever, and they just have the news blaring. It's so unsettling. Really. So for me, most people probably can handle more than I can, but I'm really careful about that. Yeah. So I have one newsletter that I subscribe to that kind of takes highlights of different things, and I can scroll that pretty fast, kind of get an idea and know, what's happening real quick in that day.
Yeah.
What rules for you have been helpful? I mean, outside of the social media on the phone.
I have, it does go a little bit back to the to the sports shows. So after about 9 a.m.
You mean like the sports talk shows?
Yeah. So after about 9 a.m.,
they're talking about the
news story has been really covered, and now they're just giving conjecture or opinion or commentary.
And that's the 24-hour cable news cycle.
And that's really the way most of our news works.
Yeah.
So there's news that happens, but most of those sites are not adjusting in real time. And there's very little breaking news that happens in the afternoon. And so I don't really need to be monitoring the news throughout the day.
Right.
I have a pretty good indication of what happened.
Yeah.
So I have kind of started, I'm checking some stuff in the morning, and even that.
But you don't let that be the first thing you do in the morning.
No,
right.
That's okay. I've been up for an hour and a half or so.
Okay, you're already into the day. You've had time to.
I'll just check in and see, okay, this is what's happening in the news, and I understand that, and I know what those stories are. And most of them are just carryovers from the day before, too. Yeah. And then in the evening.
Now, when we're working on dinner, did you, like I said, since you're the better cook?
Thank you.
When we're working on dinner, but if it's a weeknight, which is actually pretty funny, here's how it goes, everyone. We're in there. I'm usually lassoing the 13-year-old. Jay's working on some dinner. I come in to make the side dish or the salad. Right. So I'm there, and you're watching a little bit of the national news, like whatever network that is, just kind of keep. And then when I walk in, all of a sudden the volume goes all the way down. It's like Jay wants to put, you want to put like an alert up in the kitchen. News is being played for those who can't handle it.
But in 20 or 30 minutes, I will get enough of an indication of what is happening in the world, and the news sources that I've picked are news sources that I think are reliable.
Yes.
And we choose, when we do get our news, we choose to do that from multiple sources, and we do it where we understand the bias. So all those news sources have bias.
They do.
And they have an intention to grab an audience and to keep an audience.
Yeah.
And so we recognize that.
So if you vary the source.
Yeah, but I'm being very intentional now about how much news I let in.
Yeah.
And here's the reality of it. It doesn't change that much. Once you get the base information, usually at one time in the day, it is not ever evolving. It's not always growing. Nothing's going to happen if you miss.
But you feel like you check it in the morning and then you check it at night.
Yeah, and I in a pretty limited sense.
Yeah,
your dad
and then you call me in for the baby panda stories. Hey, come look at this baby panda.
Your dad is fond of saying, "News will find you." So if there are significant events, you'll know, and so that's part of it. I have really limited the amount of time I want to do, because it is having such a derogatory impact on my emotions and my well-being and my thing. I get caught up in it just like everybody would.
Yeah.
And to a place where I can't really impact that. And this is a big thing for us right now. We're spending an awful lot of time, you and I, talking about the things that we can impact and the things that we cannot impact.
Yes, and nationally, the things that we often can't, other than voting.
And anxiety comes in on the things that you cannot impact.
Right.
And so that's where the rub or the emotions get big.
Yeah.
You want to impact the future, but you have no control over the future, so anxiety comes in. So with news, there's this understanding of, okay, these are the things that are happening in the world.
Yeah.
And yet no one's asking me. I think there's an important role that we play in terms of being informed and knowing those kinds of things. But then after that, if I can't impact that, if I can't change that, if there's nothing I can do about that, then that's just going to be anxiety building.
Yeah, there's no reason to take that on. It's sort of like layers of anxiety. We all have enough stress and things that we could potentially have anxiety and worry over in our own lives. So then when we're taking in too much information from, whether that be statewide or internationally, all those news, to me, it's just sort of like layer upon layer. It's not like it's going to help you feel more peaceful about your own personal life. And I heard something interesting. I can't remember the author or philosopher maybe that it was attributed to, but it basically was talking about, this is interesting considering social media, that the human soul, I guess they said, is really only capable of knowing 150 people, which is interesting because I feel like we know way more than 150 people. That doesn't mean we can remember things about them. But the idea is that, based on how mankind used to live in small communities, there was just only the aptitude to know and be involved with that many people at different levels in your circle. So one of the things for me in social media, it wasn't even just national, international news or political thought. It was when I was on Facebook, you would, what do we have? I don't know. I'm not trying to brag or anything. I wish it weren't this way, but I have like over 2,000 friends or something,
right? I think I have like 40,000. You got like 2,000, something like that.
Stop, 240. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I have more friends. Okay. But the point is, I'd be scrolling and all of a sudden so-and-so's mom is dying of cancer and this teenager died in a car wreck, and just the deep sadness, because that's the thing about social media. A lot of times it is personal, people sharing their feelings and how wrecked they are by all this. And I don't even really know these people, but yet I would come off of that with the weight of all of those emotions and that anxiety, and then anxiety and fear. Could that happen to me? I mean, for me, that was so much of it. So I feel like news is the same way. In essence, it's other people suffering a lot of times.
Well, right now, I think a lot of people feel like social media is an outlet or a valve release for them. So they're so frustrated by the other side that part of the pressure release valve is to post that, is to express that.
So I've got to say this.
I need to say this. I need to let you know that I'm aware that this is bogus and that this is bull and that I know what they're doing and this, that, and the other. And we post that. Now, have any of us ever been changed, transformed, or whatever by a post on social media? No.
I don't think
did you change political parties because you saw somebody's post?
Be like, oh, you're right.
Now, there are a handful of times, and I mean literally a handful of times, where a post has helped create a little bit of an awareness.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare.
Yeah. If it's someone that you respect.
And there are a handful of times where the misinformation, not on behalf of the poster, but what they're posting, that misinformation is so big and so grievous and so damaging that in the kindest of terms, I might say, hey, I just let you know I checked this.
Where you got your information.
I just wanted you to know that I've checked this and this has been debunked a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And that's because, that's the little thing we can do to help not let that misinformation pandemic spread.
Right.
But that's a pretty rare, 1 or 2% thing. But, we have this thing that happened last night, which I think is really telling in this.
What happened last night? I don't remember.
Well, those who don't know, we have a daughter, and she is about...
I'm going to guess they know.
She's 13 going on 35.
Oh, geez.
And we, because we were hateful and mean parents, have not allowed her yet
rude.
to have a phone.
Nope.
Because we're trying to help rescue her from all the things that we're
having to learn to undo.
So we just have not... opted to do that yet, and but most of her besties have phones, and
actually every single one of them.
And so we allow her to essentially use your phone on occasion to be part
to stay in touch.
A number of text circles, and so those circles might be anywhere from 3 to 4 to 6 or 7 kids, depending on which circle.
Like kids in a particular math class, or the girls, or whatever.
From the moment she walks in the door after school to pretty much the time she wants to go to bed, she is asking, "Can I check the phone?"
Oh my gosh!
So we have just opted to simplify that process by saying, "Look, we're going to give you 2 chances at night to check text messages
for a timed amount of time."
I understand that. I understand how difficult it is because to be the only one who doesn't have a phone, and I understand all this other stuff. But these kids in her text circles are just nonstop.
Well, and these are, the thing is they're great kids in smart classes. They play instruments and they have good parents that are involved. I just don't think the parents are
there's
aware.
There's an energy and a dopamine hit that comes from sharing stuff and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. We know that and being connected at all times.
So we have just said, look, let's just simplify this. Let's remove some of the angst of this. You can check the phone when you get home.
Yeah.
And after you shower, get cleaned up, we'll give you 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah. And then we time it because otherwise they would just stay in constant communication.
So she was very put out by that yesterday.
That's a very nice way to put that. She was very put out.
We just said, look, here's the rule. And just so we don't have to have this conversation every single day, this is the rule.
Here's
and
it's like
so
checking
she maybe walked upstairs with kind of heavy feet. And
because she was so put out.
Not spending more time with us at that moment. And she was upstairs in her room.
Yes.
And brooding. Then about 5 minutes later, I heard the strumming of a guitar.
Yeah.
And because she couldn't default to the fast food of text messaging.
Yeah.
Or in our case, social media.
Yeah. Well, and they share videos constantly. So.
She opted to do something else with her time. And she spent the next 25 minutes working on a song of her own creation, which she would never have done if a phone would have been involved and the dopamine hit of sending text messages and getting text messages back and getting
Harry Potter videos.
All that would have been hitting her. She never would have done that.
Yeah.
And then the same thing is true. Several months ago, we had a tablet and a couple of things. We all decided we needed to take a break, and we said, look, we're not going to do the tablet for a month, and this, that, and the other.
Right.
There was some conversation about that. But in the meanwhile,
and I feel like she was also initially put out.
Yes. But in the meanwhile, she decided to create a block-wide, neighborhood-wide newspaper.
Oh, yeah. This is a few years ago.
That's been 3 years, and they're still doing the newspaper now. And all that was because she was bored. All of that was because she had that moment in time to do that.
Yes.
And it wasn't being taken up by, the fast food of social media and electronics.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's been really brilliant. And I said all that to say that that's the same thing I think that's happening for you and I as we step back from our phones, as we step back from social media, as we step back even from news and stuff that would seem like, hey, this is a good use of your time.
Right.
This is a legitimate use of your time.
Yes. It's a very adult thing to do.
Yeah.
I would just watch the news.
But stepping back from that has created more time to think about things, more time to be with each other as a family, more time to have ideas, more time to be inspired, more time to read and take things in. And where I feel like social media is a complete draw or drain on us. It's a suck, emotionally and physically.
Yeah.
I feel like these other things add too. Like when I read a book, I don't feel like something's been sucked out of me. I feel like something's been given to me.
Yes.
I feel encouraged. I feel charged. I feel like when I have conversations with people, I feel in most cases that there's a give and take and a charge that happens there.
I can't.
When I do 90% of what I do on my phone feels like something is coming out of me.
Yeah, it does. I can't remember if we talked about this here or not, but you and I have definitely talked about it as we tried to sort of get a sense of not so much a resolution, but we kind of hit a wall in December just in terms of just overall output and busyness. We were pretty much done. And so we were cooked, as we say. So in January, we started trying to figure that out. And I had the chance to go to sort of a yoga class that had some breathing, which is interesting. I don't do a lot of stuff like that, but man, when you get desperate, you're like, okay, I'm going to try this. It's actually been really good. And they asked if there was a word that you might want to think about. And I tend to be a little like, I don't know, word, whatever, that's kind of woo-woo. But immediately the word space came into my mind. And I was like, that's so interesting. Is that when you decided
you were leaving me?
I did. I'm going to space. Are you kidding? I could never be in those tiny rockets. No, but the idea was that I was in need of space in my life, those windows to just think and just be, or just walk around the garden. And what's so interesting about, and this isn't like an attack on social media or even technology, and we work with phones, but it's sort of like, it's such an easily accessible thing in your hand there, whatever you're going to do with it, that those little areas of space where you could just have a thought or be thankful for something or whatever are just easily filled. It's sort of like the middle of an Oreo, just I'm going to wedge this in there here. So what's interesting is as I've been aware of that and trying to create space in my life, how valuable just some of that quietude and doing nothing. I mean, I love the way space is defined in several ways, but one of them is a time that is not otherwise occupied. Right. So I don't always have to be doing something or even reading something or taking something in. I can just be there.
Well, if you're gonna poll people, Americans especially, and you're gonna say, what are the things that you value the most? What are the things that you're hungry for the most? If you could add something into your life. If you look at just our searches, our online searches and our app downloads and all that kind of stuff.
Like how to be a better wife and business partner.
The things that people will say the most is they wish they had more peace.
Yeah.
They wish they had more tranquility, and they wish they could be calmer. So they download calm apps, and they download meditation apps, and they download yoga apps, and do all that stuff. And yet we really refuse to do the things that would give us peace because of essentially an addiction that we have with our phones right now.
Sure.
And this obsessive relationship we have, we get a hit every time the phone vibrates. We get a hit every time something comes up on the screen and says you've got a notification. We get a charge in these things, and it is taking the space that would otherwise be filled with inspiration, or awareness, or peace, or gratitude. And like I think maybe we even talked about the last podcast. You know, that this thing about Rick Rubin was talking about inspiration, and you know, you have to, you know, there's kind of a finite amount of room in us.
Yeah.
So if that room is always being filled by news, social media, television, even Netflix, music for that matter, it's just constantly being filled.
Always having input.
Yeah, there's not enough room then for inspiration really to leak in or find that space.
Yeah.
And we often have to create that space. And it is awkward when we first start doing that. It is uncomfortable to leave your phone on the front table by the door, and
I have to hide mine.
Yes, you do. But what we do, you and I, and I need to get back to some of this because in the last couple of weeks it's been a little different, but yeah, when I will leave my phone on the table by the front door, face down, and we go on with our night, it's like hours. Yeah. And then I'll realize, I probably should check and see if anybody tried to call or message or something was important or somebody died or whatever. It's just that thing we're saying, we've spent almost all of mankind's history, humankind's history, without these devices. And people were born, and people died, and people had accidents, and people were late, and things happened, and we were all okay. And there is that space, but if you really are intentional about solitude, if you're really intentional about peace, if you're really intentional about tranquility or calm in your heart, mind, and body, well, then get rid of the Vegas-style machine that is in your hand that keeps buzzing and dinging and ringing and all those kind of things, and set it aside for a little bit.
We might not need as many call maps if we were able to.
It is an amazing transformation to not have that constantly on you or with you.
Yeah.
And
this whole talk isn't.
The reality of it is the reason we have the dopamine hit from using it, but then also there's this fear thing we're making a decision on. Well, what if somebody needs to get a hold of me? We're making a lot of decisions based on that fear.
Yeah. And this conversation isn't so much even about social media, although that's a big tool in the whole situation, but it's really about having constant input.
Yeah.
And what does it look like to clear out some windows that are just spacious? I think it's super healthy. And I need to look at even some other areas in my life where I need to do that. One of the things, I shouldn't say this out loud because anybody listening, I tend to run a few minutes late. Not rude late, but just a little bit late. But I thought to myself the other day, I accidentally ended up somewhere early. And don't look at me.
It was an absolute accident.
It was an accident.
Yes.
And then I just sat there. And instead of getting on my phone, because we're trying to be aware of that, I just had a few minutes, and I thought, this is space.
Yeah.
You might try this. I don't want to say it too much about it because I might not do it. But if one is, it's kind of, I don't know, you like that when you go places, but.
Well, and in circling back around, you talked about all this input and everything that's happening. And the reality is what makes that so difficult about where we are, I'm circling back to the first part of this conversation, is that a lot of the input we are getting right now is adversarial. A lot of the input we're getting right now is anger filled or drama filled or angst filled. And so not only are we not creating space for the things that we want, but the stuff that is filling our space is stuff that we say we don't want, which is anxiety, fear, anger, rage, all that kind of stuff. And that is what we're filling our space with on a pretty regular basis when we get into the social media and news and media and all that kind of stuff. So not only are we not creating space for the things we want, we're filling our space with the things we say we don't want.
Right.
And that is the difficult part.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's something, the encouraging part of it is, I think, just bringing it to light and talking about it with people. I mean, maybe you want to talk with your spouse, or maybe you have a friend, that, or another family member that, you could have this conversation with and say, what are some things that we might try? It's like a fast or going on a diet.
A really great idea, because, I think things are easier when you do those things together, especially in a house setting. If you have a roommate or you have a family, then you can just say, hey, what if we just did this? What if
we just put our phones?
We just put our phones over here and we just check them
on this table, right?
That kind of thing. What if we just opted to not touch a phone in the last 30 minutes before we go to bed, or
what if we did what we require our 13-year-old to do? You can check your texts once after school,
right?
And you can check them once after dinner for this many times, and then we just closed it out.
People will find you; it will be okay, and they'll get their answers. And sometimes, if you don't respond immediately, sometimes that helps somebody else respond, and you can create windows for that stuff.
I have noticed that too. Yeah, I get asked. We both do get asked to do a lot of things, and my dad's always been such a good source of wisdom in our life. But one of the things he said, of course, he's a minister, so he has people pulling on his time constantly every day. And he'll try to get a sense of, is that something I need to respond to now? Or is that something that I could wait until after this meeting for? And he says, which is so true, a lot of times if we wait and don't be the person to jump in and fix something, obviously if it's your kid and they're like on the side of the road, you need to go. But, in other cases, it gives someone else a chance to be involved in the solution and can really be an encouragement. So, I think that delay and that space in our communications can be a really good thing. And I think we'll be looking for other ways. But maybe pairing up with a friend or somebody else that kind of gets. Do you ever feel like, I feel like there's going to be societal pushback? I don't like that term, but with technology, I think you're going to see it with kids.
It is an addiction.
I feel like we're on the front side of it because people look at us weird right now, but I feel like maybe, I don't know.
I do feel like it's an addiction, and I feel like people will finally get there when they figure out that they're losing out on life, or if they figure out that there are health issues that they can't get a handle on without doing this. It's like alcohol. If someone comes to you and they say, look, you can keep drinking, but you are going to die. Or you can keep eating these fats, but this is going to kill you. And at some point, someone's going to say in the healthcare industry, hey, you can keep doing this, but you're going to have a nervous breakdown. You can keep doing this, but you're going to be unhappy. And there's not enough counseling for me to do to compensate for what you're doing over here. So you're going to have to make a decision.
That's starting to happen in the medical field in terms of kids and teenagers. And people are, you have some good books that are out and scientific research that's saying this is, but it's the same for adults. I mean, we're headed toward a crisis unless we're able to shore things up a bit. And the cool thing about it is, like, I know for you and I, it's actually been, at first it seemed tough, like no sugar for January. It was like, hey, you shut up. But I would say when that time was over, we didn't want to go back.
No.
We didn't. We've enjoyed the space.
Even when we took the social apps off our phone, we said, let's just do this for a couple weeks and see where we are. And yes, there's some inconvenience to some of it in terms of the way we post things for social events and all that kind of stuff. But that's a really small percentage in comparison to what we've been gaining ever since then. And both you and I talked about how much better we feel not being on there as much and with as much frequency, and how much healthier it is. And it is having such a negative impact in the way we see other people based on the posts that they offer up, which we disagree with. And so it's impacting the way we see them and making it harder to love them and all that kind of stuff. So I don't need that kind of help.
Right.
I can judge people on my own. I don't need I don't need their help judging them. I got it.
Don't help me hate you.
So, but you know what, dreamers, we don't hate you.
We love you.
We love you, and we love having these conversations with you. Could you do us a favor, though? If you find any of this interesting or comforting or at least engaging, would you take a second right now and share this with somebody that you think might enjoy this? That's the only way that very few people are just going to stumble onto the brilliance of this podcast.
Which is really too bad.
It is a shame.
It's going to have to come from a recommendation.
It takes somebody having a recommendation and saying, you'll love this, just listen to this, it'll help you. And so we would appreciate it if you do that for us. Just copy that little link, send it to them in a text message with their phones, and they'll get it. And all they have to do is hit play, and they'll be on the bandwagon.
Maybe you could use the conversation that we just had, if you shared it to someone, as we say, shared it with someone, as a springboard for you guys to go out and have coffee and say, okay, I feel like technology and social media is really got too much, has too much importance in my life. And how can we help each other?
If we start boycotting some of this stuff in our own lives, it will have a tremendous impact. And maybe there'll be less of it when people figure out that it's not working.
Yeah. So maybe these conversations can be a springboard for you to have some of your own with people that you love, that want the best for you.
Yeah.
We hope.
Until next time, friends, we wish you all the best. We thank you for being a part of this conversation, for loving us the way you do. Remember, we can always bring a Dreamer's Life conversation to you, even if you live away. And so we're going to have some exciting things to announce about that soon as well. But between now and then, peace out, friends.
All right. See you soon.